I want to thank you for the opportunity to glorify God in His name. He's the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. Without Him, nothing was made that was made. He certainly put my life together at a point that it had fallen apart in a significant manner. Not only was there a physical healing that shouts loud and clear, undeniably, yes, there is a God. Yes, He lives. Yes, He reigns eternally. But there was a spiritual healing that took place that was bigger, even bigger than that. And hopefully I can say the right things at the right time so that you can understand what actually happened at that point in time. It was back in 1978 that this occurred, and that was some time ago. But the memories of it are as real as it happened yesterday. And the power still remains. The power of the living God, the Spirit of the living God still reigns. And it's undeniable truth. You can't argue with the truth and the proof. Here I stand. And like many others that are out there right now, because time is short, and Jesus and God, they're returning very soon. We're at the threshold of eternity. I have come to help prepare the way of the Lord. Just like John the Baptist years ago said that he had come to prepare the way of the Lord, there's many out there like me right now that have a commission, and that is to help prepare the way of the Lord. You do that with the truth and the undeniable facts that God has given us. Anyway, getting back to the beginning and to help set a format for what's going on, I like to say that God is undeniably real, and if you'll put Him first in your life, He'll direct your path. The steps of a righteous person are ordered of God, undeniably. If you want to look back at your life a little bit and begin to reflect upon what God has done in your life, sometimes we don't even acknowledge what He's done because we're not really actively seeing what He has done in our lives. And many times if you look back as a Christian and begin to reflect upon what's happened, you begin to realize, yeah, God was there. Or guess what? Something else would have happened. I've had many things happen to me, just a few of them I'm aware of. I've had many miracles take place in my life, and there's a few things that I'm aware of. You go back as much as 15 years ago, I remember an incident that happened to me that shouts loud and clear, yes, there's a God. I worked in the career field of refrigeration air conditioning, which was a divine miracle anyway, because after the accident, they said I would never, ever be able to work in that career field again because of loss of eye-hand coordination, called motor responses, because of long-range memory, because the brain was damaged to the point, and because of the tissue that I lost, tissue that was part of the brain, they said my long-range memory was gone. They said my ability to perform in a technical manner was gone. They said I could never work in that field of endeavor again. They said it would be at least 5 years before I could even attempt the job after the wreck. All of that ended up being totally wrong. I not only went to work 9 to 10 months after the wreck, but I held a job in refrigeration and air conditioning for 29 years. June of '08, I retired after a very successful career. That shouts very loud and clear, yes, there is a God, and yet He is concerned about how we are and what we do. And He does guide and direct your path if you'll allow Him to. Yeah, and just to say lightly, the Bible says to acknowledge God in all your ways, and every way He'll direct your path. It's undeniable. But you're getting back to the truth, the reality of the situation that I faced, going way back when, I can begin to tell you that I lived a very dedicated Christian life, K through 12, that's kindergarten through high school. Continued to live a model Christian life through college and into the Air Force. All except for the last 3 months of the Air Force. Satan don't like people like me because we cause destruction to his kingdom of darkness, because there's light wherever we go. And he don't want you to be out there spreading the good news, because he's all about destroying what God has put together. Anyway, as I said I lived a model Christian life up to that point. 3 months prior to getting out of the service, Satan set a trap for me. I fell for the bait, and I did fall. Needless to say, after living such a stellar Christian life, I didn't know how to deal with failure. That wasn't part of what I knew. And the Bible says specifically that my people perish from lack of knowledge. And that's an example of what possibly could have happened to me, because I didn't really understand what it was to fail and to fall flat on your face in front of a holy God. And Satan was all over me. He began to remind me of my past. He began to tell me that I had failed so miserably that I could never regain what God had given me and how He used me, and how my life was a total failure. And I really didn't have the ability, because I didn't have the knowledge of the truth to the extent that I could even combat or battle that. Right in the middle of all of that chaos, I was discharged from the Air Force, came home to seek a job. And while I was at home looking for that job, me and two of my brothers, Gary, who's here right now, who prayed the prayer that brought me off the road. That's Gary right there. He prayed the most powerful prayer I've ever heard in my life. That's what brought me up off the road. And Dwayne, my younger brother, who commanded life into my body after the wreck occurred. But anyway, one night, it was September 14th, 1978, we decided to go to Kenny's Amusement, which is in Springfield from Marcola, maybe an 8-mile drive. We went into town that night, played, had a great time. I always enjoyed my air hockey because I was always pretty good at that. And I won a few games that night, and I go, okay, this is good. But on the way home, something really bizarre happened. There was a teenage girl that was driving a Bonneville Pontiac, a huge car compared to my 710 Datsun. And a deer came across the road, and she panicked, drove into my side of the lane in an attempt to miss the deer. She hit the deer. I had gotten over as far as I could, so they tell me. Struck the car head on. I was probably doing 45. I'd say she's doing 55. We had a combined impact of 100 miles an hour head on. It was kind of a glancing head-on collision. She hit the left front portion of my bumper. But it was big enough and bad enough to flip the car over backwards. Now, if you can believe this, my two brothers were retained in the car. They had superficial injuries, nothing really bad. I was thrown out of the car, hit the road head first. When they got out of the car, they told me, they go, "Where's Rick? Where's Rick?" They looked around and they found me laying in the road in a fetal position in a pool of blood. Well, when you go into a fetal position, you're next door to death. My brother Gary got down on the road and began to pray for me. My brother Dwayne began to command life back into my body. This is so real to me that it brings a tear to my eye, because I know the truth of what actually happened and the significance of what actually happened, and how God and His love saved me from a terrible ending. Anyway, as he began to pray on his knees in front of everybody, and as Dwayne began to command life back into my body, they heard a lady say, "He's beginning to breathe again." They looked, and indeed I was beginning to breathe again. That was the number one miracle that happened that night, but there were many. Backtracking just a little bit, there was an album that was put out that year by Dallas Home and Praise. The title cut was called "Rise Again." That was my favorite tape. That night we were playing that tape, and I wouldn't doubt if it was that song when the accident happened. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead over 2,000 years ago was there on the road that night. He raised me up out of certain death And in case you're concerned about the emotion of the moment and how you can jump to conclusions and perhaps say yes, they just imagined it. Well, they not only did they see me stop breathing, they seen my eyes roll back, they seen me go into what is called a death spasm, and they seen me go limp. I was lifeless. That's when they prayed, and that's when the Spirit of God raised me up from death to life. But to further prove the point, the ambulance finally arrived. They loaded me up, and I headed for Mentze, Willamette. Let me backtrack just a little bit and describe the damage that occurred to my body when I hit the road. Hit the road head first. It split open the right temporal region because of the impact to the road was so great that it literally split open my right temporal region. I had severe brain damage, very severe brain damage. My optic nerves were literally destroyed, and that's what delivers the eyesight from the back of your brain, or from the eyeballs to the back of the brain. You go on down the body, you go to the neck. The neck was crushed. I was having difficulty breathing because the trachea was compacted. Go on down the body a little bit more. My chest hit the steering wheel when the impact took place, partially tearing the aorta. So I was bleeding internally. The backbone was compacted in two different areas. I had compacted fractures where the vertebrae were smashed together. The greatest fear they had when I finally got to the hospital, they thought I was paralyzed.